Las Vegas, 1974. The spotlight burns bright on the king of rock and roll as 2,500 fans scream his name. Elvis Presley owns this stage. He's performed here hundreds of times, signed countless autographs, heard every confession a fan could make. But tonight, something different is about to happen. A girl in a yellow dress sitting in row 12 will walk onto that stage, lean close to Elvis's ear, and whisper 7 words that will shatter the legend's composure completely. Grown men in the audience will later say they'd never seen Elvis cry. Not like this. Not in front of everyone. What she said wasn't what anyone expected. Not the band, not his manager, not the thousands watching. And it would haunt Elvis for the rest of his life. The International Hotel was electric that August night. Elvis wore his white jumpsuit with the gold eagle spread across the chest, sweat already beading on his forehead under the stage lights. He'd been performing for 40 minutes, running through Suspicious Minds, Burning Love, the classics that made audiences lose themselves. Sarah Mitchell sat in row 12, clutching her purse so tight, her knuckles had gone white. The 19-year-old had saved for 8 months to afford this ticket. She'd taken a Greyhound bus from Tupelo, Mississippi, Elvis's birthplace, and she hadn't slept in 36 hours. But she wasn't here for the reasons everyone else was. All right, Elvis drawled into the microphone, that famous smile flashing. I need a volunteer, someone who can help me with the next song. His eyes scanned the audience. The showman in him always knew how to work a crowd. Hands shot up everywhere. Women screamed, jumped, waved. But Elvis's gaze stopped on Sarah. Maybe it was because she wasn't jumping, wasn't screaming. She just sat there, tears streaming down her face, one hand raised almost apologetically. You, Elvis pointed, yellow dress. Come on up here, honey. The security guard helped Sarah through the crowd and up the steps. Her legs nearly gave out twice. When she reached the stage, Elvis took her hand. It was shaking, and led her to center stage. What's your name, sweetheart? Elvis asked, holding the microphone between them. Sarah, she managed, her voice barely audible. Sarah, he repeated warmly. Where are you from? Tupelo. Something flickered in Elvis's eyes. His hometown. Well, ain't that something? Long way to come. You here with family? Sarah shook her head. The audience was watching, waiting. Elvis was about to continue the bit, probably have her sing a line or dance, when Sarah stepped closer. Mr. Presley, she whispered, can I tell you something? Just you? Elvis hesitated, then smiled and leaned down so she could reach his ear. The band kept playing softly. The audience murmured with curiosity. Sarah's lips moved close to his ear. Whatever she said took only seconds. Elvis froze. His smile vanished. He pulled back slightly, looking at her face, searching it. What did you say? He whispered back, not into the mic. She repeated it. Elvis's hand went to his mouth. His eyes filled with tears. Real tears. Not the emotional mist that sometimes came during Can't Help Falling in Love. His shoulders began to shake. What Sarah had whispered was this: "Your mama wanted you to know she's proud." 7 words, but they required explanation. Explanation that would come later, backstage, after Elvis had somehow finished the show while crying openly. Sarah Mitchell wasn't just any fan. Her grandmother, Dorothy Mitchell, had been Gladys Presley's nurse during the final weeks of her life in 1958. Gladys, Elvis's beloved mother, had died suddenly at 46, leaving Elvis devastated in ways he never truly recovered from. Dorothy had been there in those final days at Methodist Hospital in Memphis. She'd held Gladys's hand when the pain got too bad, had helped her to the bathroom when she was too weak to walk alone, had listened when Gladys talked endlessly about her boy, her Elvis, who was away doing basic training at Fort Hood. "He blames himself," Gladys had told Dorothy one night, her voice slurred from the medications. "He thinks if he hadn't been drafted, if he'd been here, I wouldn't be sick, but it ain't his fault. I need him to know that. I need him to know I'm proud of everything he's done. The music, the movies, all of it. He made his mama so proud." Dorothy had promised to tell him if she ever got the chance, but she never did. Elvis had been unreachable after Gladys died, surrounded by managers, handlers, moving to Hollywood. By the time Dorothy tried to send a letter through Graceland, it got lost in the thousands of fan letters that poured in daily. Years passed. Dorothy got older, her health failing. She made her granddaughter promise to finish what she'd started. "If you ever get the chance," Dorothy told Sarah from her hospital bed in 1973, "you tell Elvis what his mama said. You tell him she was proud. He needs to hear it." Dorothy died 3 months later. Sarah kept the promise like a sacred oath. When Sarah learned Elvis would be in Vegas, she bought that ticket. She didn't know if she'd get close enough. Didn't know if she'd have the courage. But when Elvis pointed at her when he called her up on that stage, she knew it was meant to be. Backstage, after the show, Elvis had invited her to his dressing room. He needed to know everything. Sarah told him about her grandmother, about the nights in the hospital, about every word Gladys had said. Elvis sat in his dressing room chair, still in his jumpsuit, mascara running down his face. His hands trembled as he held a glass of water someone had brought him. Sarah sat across from him, equally shaken by the weight of what she'd just delivered. "She really said that?" Elvis asked for the 3rd time. "She said she was proud?" "Yes, sir. Those were her exact words. My grandmother wrote them down that night because she knew they were important. I have the journal entry. I brought it with me." Sarah reached into her purse and pulled out a small, worn notebook. The page was marked with a ribbon. She handed it to Elvis. His hands shook as he read Dorothy Mitchell's handwriting from August 13th, 1958, the night before Gladys died. "Mrs. Presley spoke clearly tonight despite the pain. She asked me to promise something. She said, if you ever meet my boy, you tell him his mama was proud. So proud. He didn't cause this. He gave me the best life. He made me happier than any mother's got a right to be. You tell him that. I promised her I would. God willing, I'll keep that promise." Elvis pressed the notebook to his chest and sobbed. Not the controlled emotion of a performer, but the raw, broken crying of a son who'd lost his mother 16 years ago and never stopped grieving. "I thought," Elvis started, then stopped. "I always thought she died disappointed. I was away. I was in the army. I couldn't be there. I got emergency leave, but I did not make it in time. She died, and I wasn't holding her hand." "She knew you wanted to be there," Sarah said softly. "My grandmother told me she talked about you constantly, about how you used to bring her little gifts when you were small, even when you had no money, about how you'd promised to buy her a pink Cadillac someday. And you did. She wasn't disappointed, Mr. Presley. She was proud." Joe Esposito, Elvis's road manager, stood in the corner of the room witnessing this. He'd been with Elvis for years and had seen him happy, angry, excited, exhausted. But this was different. This was healing something that had been broken for nearly 2 decades. "Can I keep this?" Elvis asked, holding up the journal entry. "I'll give it back. I need to." "It's yours," Sarah said. "My grandmother would want you to have it." Elvis never did another show quite the same way after that night. Those who knew him well, the Memphis Mafia, his musicians, his close friends, noticed the change. There was a softness to him, a peace that hadn't been there before. He carried Dorothy's journal entry with him everywhere. It went into a small leather wallet he kept in his inside pocket, right over his heart. During shows, when he'd sing gospel numbers like "How Great Thou Art," he'd sometimes touch that pocket, and those who knew the story understood why. 3 months after meeting Sarah, Elvis called her. She was back in Tupelo, working at a diner and going to community college. "I want to do something for your grandmother," Elvis said. "For Dorothy. She kept that promise. That means something. Mr. Presley, you don't have to. I want to set up a scholarship at the nursing school in Memphis, the Dorothy Mitchell Memorial Scholarship for nurses who want to work in hospice care. People who sit with folks at the end, who listen to them, who make promises and keep them. Like your grandmother did." Sarah cried. She would have loved that. The scholarship was established in January 1975. Elvis funded it personally, enough to send 10 students through nursing school every year. He never publicized it, never used it for press. It was private, personal. Elvis died in August 1977, just 3 years after meeting Sarah. When the news broke, Sarah was devastated. She flew to Memphis, stood outside Graceland with thousands of others, and wept. But years later, when she thought about Elvis, she didn't think about his death. She thought about that night in Vegas, about how 7 words from beyond the grave had given him something he'd been searching for since 1958. Permission to stop blaming himself. Permission to believe his mother had died at peace, proud of her son. The Dorothy Mitchell Memorial Scholarship still exists today. It's funded through Elvis's estate, and it sent over 400 nurses into hospice care. Nurses who sit with dying patients, who listen to their final wishes, who sometimes make promises they'll keep for decades. Sarah Mitchell is 84 now. She still has her ticket stub from that Vegas show framed in her living room. And she still tells the story of the night she made Elvis Presley cry. Not because she wanted to, but because sometimes the most important thing you can give someone is the truth they've been waiting their whole life to hear. Elvis Presley performed thousands of shows in his lifetime, but August 1974 in Las Vegas was the night everything changed. A promise kept across 16 years, delivered by a 19-year-old girl in a yellow dress, gave the king of rock and roll the peace he'd been searching for since his mother's death. What do you think you would have said to Elvis if you'd had that moment? Have you ever delivered a message that changed someone's life? Share your stories in the comments below. We'd love to hear them. And if this story moved you, share it with someone who needs to hear about the power of keeping promises, even when it takes years to fulfill them.